Okay, well, you might as well get started. Let's see. Today's really our last full day of class. Because Wednesday I go over the field requirements. And we might do a few activities. I'm not sure what time we're going to have. What kind of time we're going to have. Anyway, I want to ask you to see how you would teach 3 times 24. How are you going to get your students to learn 3 times 24? If you recall, where we left off a long time ago was we had done the basic facts of multiplication. Okay, we've done all the basic facts of multiplication. And now what we want to do is we want to begin to look at more than 1 digit times 1 digit. Now we're looking at 1 digit times 2, then 1 times 3, and so on. So now the way we do this, at least the way I did it, is that we multiply 3 times 4 is 12, and we carry the 1, and then 3 times 2 is 6, and 1 is 7. Okay? Now that is our goal for our students. Okay? So here we are in 3rd grade. That's the goal for our students to be able to do that. How are we going to get them to do that? That's my question to you. Okay? Well, I just want you to talk about and develop some kind of lesson idea that we'll talk.
Middleman, we got this, y'all. Okay. That's all.
But I would actually do, I would groups of 4 and then 3 groups of 20, and then just have them add it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I was thinking 24 would be, I think, like how you're breaking it down makes more sense.
Just?
And I almost was like 3 groups of like that, groups of 2, and I'm like kind of a note share, like every, for the past, like, I don't even know how long she's worked for, like 6 years. Every day is a conversation. So she cut off for some people though, 10, 20, like that, I would say, so like last week, I don't think it's gonna go hard. And that's what really messed us up, because it was just beside us, there's no possibility.
Okay, ready? Ideas? Tony, you had your hand up. I think Lauren, did you have your hand up too, or Troy?
Well, of course, you want to put them in groups, and so I said maybe you would break them up into 3 groups of 4, and then 3 groups of 20, and then add them that way.
All right. Lauren?
I'm thinking you use like the counting, like the blocks.
The
that
base
we
10
have,
blocks?
The base 10 blocks, and then show 3 groups of 24.
Okay.
And then how they combine that.
All right. Anybody else? Okay, I mean, that's exactly what you want to do. So you're thinking, in a very, in a manner that students need to think. Okay, so we're going to go back to what the meaning of this is, and you said groups, so 3 groups of 24. All right, and that's what's going to allow us to overcome some of the difficulties with teaching this, because the way I did it up here, notice I said 3 times 4, okay? And if a student's thinking, that doesn't make any sense. It's 3 times 24. What allows me is to pull off the 4 and ignore the 2. Okay, then by the same token, I put the 2 down here and 1 down up there. A lot of students will get confused by that because they'll say you can just break 12 apart like that. We talked about that before, the idea of carrying. And then I come over here and go 3 times 2, which really that's not a 2, that's a 20. But again, what allows me just to do that and ignore that? All right, so yeah, I do want to use blocks, I do want to use groups.
So wait, so they basically did theirs concrete, and we did it semi-concrete, right? If we're saying, just make groups, you do your tally marks and stuff.
Either
so
one.
Okay.
Pictures.
Yeah, it'd be up to you because I'm going to show you both, how to do it both ways. Okay? Bless you. So if I have the students think about, just like you said, okay, what does 3 times 24 mean? What does multiplication mean? Maybe I'll have to begin with like 3 times 6 or 3 times 7 just to say, okay, what does that mean, 3 times 7? 3 groups of 7. Then say, then what would this mean, 3 groups of 24? So there's my 3 groups of 24. Okay, now when I have it like this, I can see, and I think Tony, you said this. I can ask the students, do you see 3 groups of 4? Okay, and I do see 3 groups of 4. And how do I write that? 3 groups of 4. Okay. So now you see how I pulled the 4 away, and it makes sense. Actually, I have, the students have. Okay, do you see 3 groups of 20? Okay, so say, yeah, I can see 3 groups. How do I write that? Okay. Now, this method, getting the students to go from here to here, is called partial products. Okay, so a product is multiplication. Okay, so we're doing partial products. Now, to get them to go from here to here, a lot of teachers don't use these pictures or manipulatives, and the students just see it as another routine. That doesn't make sense. Okay, but what you can do is exactly what I showed you up here, what you talked about. Have them show you 3 groups of 24, and when they see the 3 groups of 24, now you can ask them, do you see 3 groups of 4? How do I write it? Do you see 3 groups of 20? How do I write it? Okay? So what we're going to do in this, using partial products, is we're going to ask the students, you know what 3 times 4 is. Of course they do, it's a basic fact, 12. Now the 3 times 20 can be a little bit tricky. So prior to this lesson, I'm going to do what's called decade multiplication. So prior to this lesson, I'm going to do an activity like this. This isn't the greatest handout, but it's really meant for you to take with you and give you an idea for how to teach this concept. Okay, so this is going to set up patterning. So prior to what we just did up here, the day before maybe, I'm going to ask the students to do something similar to this. I'm going to ask them, what's 3 times 2, for example? And of course they'll say 6. Not a big deal. Now 3 times 20 they may not know. So here's where I use a calculator. Okay, so have them do a calculator. 3 times 20. Did you need a CV?
What are we doing here? What class is this?
This is early childhood.
337?
337, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
What are they learning today?
We're learning how to multiply.
Oh, okay. Is that an online thingy that you can move things with, or this is a decoration on it?
No, that's under the document camera.
Oh, okay.
I did have my.
Oh, so you could demonstrate.
Yeah, so that's 3 groups of 24. 3 times 24.
That's true.
And so, but you remember, I do have my computer program.
Yeah, I know.
It just isn't completed yet.
Yes, I know. That's what you can do on sabbatical, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
so.
good. All right, I was checking for Chad. I don't know, was he in class in the morning or not?
I haven't seen it this morning.
Okay, all right. Did Dr. Malcolm have class in the morning on Monday?
Yes, 8
Oh,
a.m.,
he's-
but
8 a.m.
he may have been gone.
He
Yeah.
said he's ditching class, that's what he said.
Just checking in to get ready for the methods meeting. I sent you an email about the methods
I
meeting.
saw it.
I got the URL from the website address from Paige downstairs, so I'm gonna go in and just check for everybody to see if you have to update it, just the date. But I do need to know if there's anything new. Can I answer?
Yeah, it's just gonna be the date when they
The
get their
date
thing.
on that letter or
Yeah.
whatever, yeah. Okay, fine. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Barb.
Hi, Lauren, how are you? Okay, hello, everybody else that I've had in class, okay.
All right, so before we can get to this, because right now, they don't really know how to do 3 times 20, because that's a 1 times 2. That's a single times a two digits. That's what we're teaching today. So we go back to this, and I ask them, and again, you can use this verbally. You can say, what's 3 times 2? They can tell you 6. You can say, okay, now use your calculators. We're going to use the calculators to explore. what's 3 times 20? And so they put that in, and they get 60. We ask them what's 3 times 200, and they put that in their calculator, they get 600. Okay? You see how I'm setting up a pattern here? Now I'm going to ask them, without the calculator, what's 3 times 2,000? It's not going to be too hard for them to say, oh, it looks like it's going to be 6,000. Okay? How did you get that? Well, it looks like it's just, up here I start seeing a pattern, so 660, 600, 6,000. Okay? Now what I would emphasize is, look at the zeros here and the zeros here. What do you notice? Okay? Okay, we have the same number of zeros, then it's just 3 times 3 with all those zeros on the end. Okay, so if I'd ask them, what's 3 times, bless you,
Thank you.
3 times 200,000, now they would say, okay, it looks like it's going to be 6 with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros on the end. Okay, so they're starting to use this pattern. All right? It works for this one. It's going to work for other ones. Well, that's what we're going to do a few more. That's 4 times 3, they get 12. 4 times 30, they get 120. 4 times 300, and they get 1200. And then I can again ask them, what do you get? You have 4 times 3,000. All right, so now they're seeing it a second time. Okay? And I would point out, after they guess 4 times 3,000, they would check with the calculator. And I would point out, do you see a relationship between the zeros in the beginning problem and zeros in the end? So it'd be just 4 times 3, and just counting up those zeros and putting them on the end. Okay, something like that. They'll come up with something like that. All right, now they can multiply a problem like 3 times 20. Okay, now they know how to do this. So this is the day before, bless you. This is the day before. Now we come into this day, ask them what's 3 times 4, because they told me I see 3 groups of 4. How do I write it? 3 times 4. I ask them what's 3 times 4, 12. That's a basic fact. I ask them, do you see 3 groups of 20? Yes, I do see 3 groups of 20. How do I write that 3 times 20? How do I multiply this? Okay, remember we learned this yesterday, and it would be 3 times 2 with a 0 on the end, or however they want to call it. We would say placeholder. Remember you used to put a 0 down, or I guess we just goes 3 times 0, 0, and 3 times 2. Okay. Are we okay so far? All right, so now I'm going to say, we know what 3 times 4 is, what 3 times 20 is. We could do 3, so 3 times 24 would be adding both of these up. So 3 groups of 24 is equal to 72. Okay, this process going from here to here is called partial products. Okay, that's taking a product and breaking it into parts. Now, we did it one time. I would leave this information on the board. I would do it again. I could use pictures, I could use manipulatives. So I could put 5 groups of 13. I could have the students draw 5 groups of 13. I would definitely want to have it some way that I can line the things up. Okay, so I could say, do you see 5 groups of 3? How do I write that? And what's the answer? 15. And you see 5 groups of 10. How do I write that? And then I come over here, I put 15 and 50, and I add them together. Okay, maybe I do a third problem. And now I've got my data on the board, I can ask them, okay, when we went from 3 times 24 to these two here, we had to use the base 10 blocks. Can you figure out a way to go from this to these two, from this to these two without the base 10 blocks? Okay, do you see a way? Not using the base 10 blocks, I could just, the 3 times 24, so it's going to be 3 times 4, and then 3 times that with a 0 on the end. 5 times 3 I'll put here, and 5 times 1 with a 0 on the end. So they start to see that pattern, okay? So now we will test it, okay? I give another problem, and I let them use partial products to figure out the problem. We okay with this? All right, now, a mistake that, like I said before, that teachers make is they will go from this to this without the base 10 blocks, and the students think you're just changing the problem. You know, why can't I just change the problem like that? Well, really, you aren't changing the problems. You're just breaking it down into smaller parts. Okay, so again, that's what the base 10 blocks or a drawing will help us with here. Okay, they understand why that works.
What grade is this?
This is 3rd grade. Question? Question?
That's it, we're out, you're out. Bless you for all day.
Okay, so they're working on that, and that's the end of the lesson for that day. That's all they're going to do. So they're working on it, and they're getting really good at partial products. And so maybe someday, it could even be the next day or a day later, I could say, okay, let's write some of the problems on the board that you did without the partial products, without the breaking up part. Because you ended up with this, and you ended up with this, and let's just pretend like they did this problem here. All right. So they're very good at doing the partial products. I'm just going to write this version of what was in their homework or what they've just done. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to look at this, I'm going to say, do you notice something that's always in here is always a 0, right? Always a 0 here, here, and here, right? So when I do that 3 times 4, and I get 12, that 2 is always in the answer. 5 times 3, I get 15, that 5 is in the answer. 2 times 7 is 14, that 4 is going to be in the answer. So if I have 3 times 25, what can you tell me about the final answer? What's going to be in the final answer in the ones place? A 5. Okay? So I know that 5 is going to be in there. I'll write that down. I know that's going to be in the final answer. Now, what happens to the tens part of that 5 or that 2 or that 4? I've got to always add it to the other multiplication. Okay, the number that's below. So 1, 10, and 8 tens is 9 tens. 1 10, 5 tens, 6 tens. 1 and 6 and 7. So I know I have 3 times 5 is 15. So I know I have a 10 I have to still add. And that 10 I have to add when I multiply 3 times 20. Okay? Does that make sense so far? Are we okay with this? Okay with this? All right. So I'm going to write just up here so I can remember 110, or I might even just do that. One or the other. It doesn't really matter. Whatever the students feel comfortable with. But the 10 part of the 15, I still have to add. Okay, because that's what I always did before. The 10 part of the 14, the 10 part of the 15, always gets added to this multiplication right here, okay? So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make that second multiplication, 3 times 20, which is 60, and 60 and 10 is 70, and 70 and 5 is 75. Is that okay? You okay with this? Okay, now there's a lot of little parts in there, so I would definitely do this again and again, all right? I might even go back and I might say, remember this one here? Let's see if we can do this one all like this without having to write this intermediate steps, without having to write the partial products. So if I would do this, I know 3 times 24, I know 3 times 4 we would do. Remember, we would write it over there and they could be looking at their paper. Remember, we wrote 3 times 4. I'm just not going to rewrite it. I'm just going to think about it here. 3 times 4 is 12. And so I know the ones part, the 12, the 2, is in the answer. And they can look over at their paper and say, yeah, it's over here, here's the answer. And then the tens part of the 12, I need to add to the 3 times 20. Okay with that? Shannon, you okay with it?
Yeah, I was just thinking of, is that kind of like, remember when we were adding and we had our paper with the tens, ones, and hundreds?
Oh.
Could you do it like that,
You could.
even though it's multiplication?
Yeah, because like when I'm lining them up there, you could use that map for that up there.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got, my students have this here, and they also have the 3 times 4 and the 3 times 20 over there for reference. So I can say, okay, what was the second one we did? They can look over here, it's 3 times 20. Okay, so up here, that would be 3 times that. I'm just going to cover up the 4. 3 times 20 is 60, and 10 is 70. So I have to add that to it, just like I did here. 60 plus 10 is 70, and then I add the 70 to 2. I get 72. Okay? So this thing we're going through right now, we've gone through this in a few minutes. You probably would take like a good 15 minutes going through. Okay? Because it is kind of, now some of the students are going to get it right away. All right, now just go ahead and try a few of the problems while we continue to work on this. All right? But there will be some that'll get, because there's a lot of things you have to kind of balance here in your mind. And it's hard for them to balance things in their mind, okay? Hard for even adults to balance things. Now, if you would like an intermediate step between the partial products and what we're doing up here, an intermediate step is when you have the partial products to challenge the students to see, do I really have to write that as 3 times 4 and 3 times 20? Could I just look at this and cover this up and say 3 times 4 and get 12? And then cover this one up and put a 0 there and see 3 times 20 is 60? And then, so in other words, instead of writing those other 2 parts, could I come up with a way just to get these numbers by covering this up and covering this up and so on? Okay, putting a 0 in there. All right, so you could have the students on one day learn it that way before they come and do what I just did here. Yes?
I know you said that our next class we're probably gonna talk about like field requirements and stuff, but as I'm like listening to this, I'm wondering, like, this is probably good for us as teachers in general, but going into the field, we're late in the season. These kids probably know this already, right? Because.
Oh, they might not. They
No.
might not, but
Depending. Like, I don't know, like, what people know third quarter of the school year, you know, so.
yeah.
So that's probably gonna be where we have to sit down with our teacher and figure out where they're at and then what we should kind of like do for them, basically.
Yeah, and so just like today, the first thing I said, how would you teach this? Okay, so you might be doing, you're definitely doing stuff that we haven't talked about here because there's just so much stuff. But you did exactly what you should do. Okay, so you came up with these ideas and it's just a matter of turning those ideas into a lesson. You don't have to say, oh, I didn't do what Dr. Christie did. That doesn't matter. That you did with the groups and the pictures and the manipulatives, that is the most important part. Now, it's just a matter of how you're going to build that lesson, but you already are doing it. You're doing what you should be. Now, if you're in a school, because there are a lot of third grades classes, you might get into one where they're still learning their basic facts of addition. Okay, so that's why I say you really don't know where they're going to be. If you're in a very high achieving school, they could be doing 16 times 25, 2 digits times 2 digits. Okay, or 3 digits times 3 digits. And in that case, if they're doing it and they already have a routine, it's not going to be good for you to go back and do this unless you can do it without them realizing it. In other words, if I were, let's say I came into a class and they've been working on this up here. The teacher never did this, never did partial products, just was doing this, and just carried the 1, for example. So you come in, and the teacher says, yeah, I've been working on this for 3 weeks. A few of the students get it, but a lot of them don't. I want you to work on that tomorrow. And if you come in and say, okay, let's work on 3 times 24, take out your base 10 blocks or draw this, they are not going to want to do that. Okay? Because they're going to say, why do I have to do all that? No, we aren't supposed to do that. We're supposed to just do this over here. All right? In other words, it's very difficult to go backwards with students, to go back to base 10 blocks once they've already seen a way to do it. Okay? So what I would do as a teacher, if I want to use base 10 blocks or drawings, I wouldn't put that 3 times 24 on the board. I'd say, okay, here are the base 10 blocks. Hopefully they have base 10 blocks and they're used to them. Can you show me a group of 24? Just show me one 24, they show me a 24. Can you show me 3 groups of 24? You see how they don't know, they aren't making the connection right now, but I'm getting them to be focused and follow along. So they show me 3 groups of 24. I can say, oh, do you see 3 groups of 4? Do you see 3 groups of 20? Okay, what's 3 groups of 4? How is that? How do I write that? 3 times 4. How do I write 3 groups of 20? 3 times 20. Okay, now I've got them. Now they're focused. They understand the concept. And now when I go over here, even if I'm going all the way to where they're just carrying the 1, okay, 3 times 4 is 12, carry the 1, 3 times 2 is 6, and 1 is 72. At least now I can start explaining this or helping them to understand. Say, okay, so you were doing this, you were going 3 times 4. Where was 3 times 4 on your desk? I said, well, you had 3 groups of 4 ones. Okay, so that was 12. And so you had 2, 1. What's the 1 and the 2? And see, you can start explaining that 1 and 2 really is, that's 1 10 and 2 1s. Okay, so you can kind of fill in the gaps to help them to understand. All right. You could also, and again, it's up to the teacher, if you wanted to teach this as partial products, like we were just talking about, you could ask the teacher, can I do that as partial products? And so basically what you would do is you'd have the students bring out all the manipulatives, show me 3 groups of 24. They show you, do you see 3 groups of 4? Do you see 3 groups of 20? How do I write 3 groups of 4? How do I write 3 groups of 20? What's 3 times 4? What's 3 times 20? So if I add these up together, the 3 groups of 4 and the 3 groups of 20, do I get 3 groups of 24? Okay, and then you can just go from there. So then maybe you put in a step that the teacher wasn't doing, so maybe your lesson is just doing this. Okay, and then the teacher has a better chance then of, or even you, of bringing them together like we were doing before. Okay, and when you're out there in the field, I'll say this again Wednesday. But you may have a teacher you may have a very prescribed program. In other words, they want you to do it this way on this day. Okay, it may not have manipulatives. They have pictures of manipulatives, may not even have pictures of manipulatives. All right, all I want you to do is ask the teacher, when we learn these methods, I'd like to do, like for example, if you're looking at this right here, okay, and she says, I want you to teach this in 2 days. And you're looking at it and you're saying it's all traditional, okay, or very traditional. And you might say like the next day, I'd like to use these manipulatives. Here, let me show you what I want to do. and if the teacher says, oh, that's great, you can do it, then fine. If the teacher says, no, we can't do that, we've got to do it like this. And you're saying, Dr. Christie isn't gonna like that. No, I'm gonna be okay with it, so long as you ask. Okay, so you might give me 5, you're gonna do 5 lessons, they might be very, very traditional, but I'll understand why you had to do it like that. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that, but just ask. Okay? Any questions about multiplication? Multiplying? Now, any questions? I said any questions, I just kept looking at my own stuff, you know. It's like I didn't really pay attention. Anybody have any questions? That's too bad, I just, I have to say it's in my lesson plan, but I'm not really.
Any other questions at this time?
Yeah. I will answer any questions at this time, but I really won't look for any.
Do you think that it will be wise for us to, before we go into the field, go downstairs and pop out some of those base 10 blocks out of foam, or do you think
You
that?
could borrow mine.
Okay, if we need it.
Yeah, any of my stuff, the books and the manipulatives, the rulers, the, you know, whatever I had in that box over there, you know, the wooden blocks and things like that, okay? But the thing about the Ellison machine, it's great for the fractions, but it's a real pain for the base 10 blocks, because those squares are so tiny that if you get enough of them, and they're always, and they get like static electricity, so sometimes you push them, they stick to your finger, and they're a real pain to use. I would, if I were you, I would make little fraction sets. I mean, right there, for maybe $8 of foam, because I think my fraction sets cost $8 to $10 a piece. So that would be very, very cheap. Now, Tony, you mentioned about drawings. Okay, let's say I don't have base 10 blocks. I do have these. Okay, so I could ask them, can you show me 3 groups of 24? Okay, so they color in 2 10s, 1, 2, 3, 4. I might have to help them with that if they haven't used this before. I might just have to say, okay, can you show me 1 group of 24? What would that look like here? And they color them in. You know, oh, show me 15. They should color them in. Show me 68. They color them in. And now you're ready. Okay, they understand how to use this. Now I'm going to say, can you show me 3 groups of 15? Okay, and then that's how you go from there. Okay? All right, now you have some candy in front of you, and I think I did this before. I don't know why this feels like what I'm about to do. I did before in here. Did I do the doorbell rang? The doorbell rang?
I don't think I heard that.
Okay, I didn't do this book, I don't know why, maybe it just seems like it's so close to last semester when I did it. Okay, so here we are, we're in 2nd grade, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to read this book, The Doorbell Rang. And some of you have probably seen this.
Oh, I've heard of this.
You've seen this?
Yeah, they multiply in, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good.
I made some cookies for tea, said Ma. We have tea. Good, said Victoria and Sam. We're starving. Share them between yourselves, said Ma. I made plenty. That's 6 each, said Sam and Victoria. They look as good as Grandma, said Victoria. They smell as good as Grandma, said Sam. No one makes cookies like Grandma, said Ma, as the doorbell rang. Okay? So right now, I mean, I'd probably read this through once. So pretend like this is the 2nd time through. So I'd say, okay, right now, how many cookies does Sam and Victoria get if they share them equally? And you've got, I just put candy on your desk because I got to get rid of this candy. I didn't want to buy more cookies. I didn't want to buy something else like cookies, but you could have the little cookies. And so they could break them up, okay, into 2 groups of 6. All right, so now they're doing division conceptually. Okay? It was Tom and Hannah from next door. Come in, said Ma, you can share the cookies. Okay, so now, I'll turn that quickly, I would say, okay, so now we have 4 people, how many cookies do they each get? Of course, they have the manipulatives right there, they can break them up. Okay? That's 3 to Sam and Victoria. They smell as good as your grandma, said Tom, and look as good, said Hannah. No one makes cookies like grandma, said Ma, as the doorbell rang. It's Peter and his little brother. Come in, said Ma, you can share the cookies. Okay, so how many people are we sharing with now?
The 5?
We have 6, okay? So I can say, okay, how much does each person get, so that the students can break up the cookies. All right. That's 2 each, said Victoria and Sam. They look as good as your grandma, said Peter, and smell as good. Nobody makes cookies like grandma, said Ma, as the doorbell rang. It was Joy and Simon, and their 4 cousins. Come in, said Ma, you can share the cookies. Okay, so Joe, Simon, and their 4 cousins, so we have 6 more people. So how many cookies does each person get? They get, you know, the idea, I think. I hope. That's 1 each, said Sam and Victoria. They smell as good as your grandma, said Joy, and look as good, said Simon. No one makes cookies like grandma, said Ma, as the doorbell rang. And rang. Oh dear, said Ma, as the children stared at the cookies on their plates. Perhaps you'd better eat them before we open the door. We'll wait, said Sam. It's Grandma with an enormous tray of cookies. How nice to have so many friends to share them with, said Grandma. It's a good thing I made a lot. Okay? No one makes cookies like Grandma, said Ma, as the doorbell rang. All right? So you kind of see how you can get the idea of division here with that. And now you can go through the book even again and say, okay, they began with 12. And they broke them up into 2 different groups. And everybody ended up with 6. When we broke up the 12 into 2 groups, this is what we mean by it. We do that. Looks like a minus sign with a dot above it and a dot below it. And it's not on a tilt. Okay, so that means break them up, and you can almost see in the sign itself, it's almost like it's breaking up 2 things. Okay, let's divide, and then this means what do you end up having? You end up having 6 each. So I can just go through that, introduce the division sign, and then, you know, in a little bit, this is called division. Even as I'm going through the book, I could say, well, how are they going to divide up? You know, kind of bring in those words. But I'll call it the division sign a little bit later, once they've done a few of the problems. All right? Any questions on introducing division? Now, let's take a look at the types of division. And for those in the middle school class, and I meant to bring this for you all too. Trying to think, when we did division of fractions, do you remember there were 2 types of division? I want to bring you that skills out of this thing for division with 0, right? I don't know if you remember, there was briefly a part where I talked, or in the handout I talked about measurement and partition, 2 different types of division. And that we were going to use 1 type in the fractions. Okay, so that's what this is here. It's really, again, this isn't really meant for the students, it's meant for you. But this explains how the problem 18 divided by 6 equals 3, how the students will do it 2 different ways depending on how you pose the question. Okay, 2 completely different ways. So you have partition, what's called partition, and what's called measurement. Okay, so partition, let's look at that kind of a problem. This is the idea of fair share. This is kind of the idea we just worked with the cookies. Okay, sharing fairly. There are 18 pieces of candy to be shared by 6 people. How many pieces does each person get? Okay, and the kids are used to doing this, so I could have 18 pieces of candy there, and you're going to see them. What they're going to do is they have the 18, Now, they don't know how many each of the six people get, like we would just say, oh, they each get 3. Okay, so what they're gonna do is, if you watch them, they're gonna go 1 for you, 1 for you, 1 for you, 1 for you, 1 for you. We got some more, 1 for you, 1 for you, 1, until they're all exhausted. Okay? That's the strategy for partition. Okay? And then that's 18 divided by 6 is 3. That's usually the way we introduce division, but there's a second form. And look at this second form. If I ask a question like this, there are 18 pieces of candy. How many groups of 6 can you create? You know, think about the second graders, how they're going to do that. They're going to take 6 out and say, there's one group, 6 out, there's another group, and 6, there's 6. I did it completely different than I did before when I went 1, 1, 1, but the problem is the same. 18 divided by 6 is 3. All right, so the measurement type of problem comes a little bit later. We usually introduce partition. We use partition, and you saw that when the doorbell rang. Measurement gets into repeated subtraction. Okay, so I have 18, I take away 6, I'm left with 12. 18 minus 6 is 12. Take away 6, I'm left with 6. So that's what it says there. At the very bottom, 18 minus 6 minus 6 minus 6. Okay? Any questions about those two types? All right, how about we take a 5-minute break, and then we will come back and look at long division and remainders.
Did you meet with the teacher?
So I emailed my last meeting, and I told you that she said, like, are you also working with Kathy's?
Yeah.
But I was just like, I'm not sure, but, there's a possibility, I was like, I could meet with you like Monday at 9, but she just never did that. So I'm
She
trying
was
to.
supposed to meet, I was supposed to meet last Thursday, she canceled with me.
Oh, really?
And then said, I can't meet till the 25th.
Okay. So I'm sure like they're probably just, like, I'm just gonna wait till like my allergies and.
Yeah, I'm at, so Carmen's in spring break this week.
Is that really please?
For this class. So excited.
Why?
Because the whole, like, if I'm not placed, Parma is not close from me.
How far is it? What? It just depends.
It's
Parma's
like 30,
big.
from me, it's like 30
Yeah.
minutes. 20, 30 minutes, depending on traffic.
Yeah.
Well then, if I'm not placed in Parma or even Berea, I'm kind of screwed.
Yeah.
Cause that's what I told her when she messaged me back for like another meeting time. I said I get my next placement like around Tuesday or Wednesday of this upcoming week. So I'll be able to give you a better, like, idea of when I'll be able to meet. Because I don't wanna say that I can meet for an hour on Monday or Wednesday or whatever, and then not be able to. I can't do Thursday. Literally, it has to be next Friday. I can't, I have to wait up to that.
How much you want?
hard assessment thing and answer those questions.
Yeah, I'll bring mine.
Or we could just send me a picture of like the feed we use.
It's hinted in the tuition. So with your tuition.
It's a lot of math, like that's all we're there to teach is math, it seems like.
It's and I've seen it.
For what?
It's probably,
For what? Is there a Kevin gown involved in that?
no, it's probably for our, yeah, it's a
It is all- I thought that, she was putting her friend. No, she just came into my room while Karen was leaving, she's like,
Oh, that's right.
We're registered for that already?
she posted it like,
She
she
well,
lied.
I had it for-
Yeah.
Like, I thought your fish right, Karen.
Yes.
I understand why she's annoyed though.
No, I completely get it
They
too.
sent Emily home, everybody home before her.
That doesn't make sense, they treat her like.
Oh my gosh. Pigs look so cute. When she also has a friend with a pig, tore her whole yard up.
Yeah.
No, like, I felt her, like, when she was bitching about it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, mine is for
But I didn't, I honestly had a feeling that she really
the
was
way
gonna
their
show,
property,
and I was like,
the way
dude,
their
we're gonna
property
really be
is,
screwed.
there's like 4 or 5 houses, I think, that the family, like everyone
What's this?
for. It's like his aunt and uncle,
So
it's his dad, it's his grandma, it's
Do we have to write a welcome answer?
cousins, and then there's a house that they live down, so like, they just share their
Oh my
backyard.
god, we're gonna have to teach John.
And their backyards are across it. And my father-in-law like had goats and chickens and like, it's the pig is mainly for my father.
But I'm sure she'll still want us to come for it.
In like 2 years. So there's really no purpose for her to have a pig,
Kind of make sure that they.
but my father-in-law is like,
Well, he'll probably not care.
but it's still gonna get pretty big. Because everyone says.
Can you tweet me on the story for the next 2 years?
Oh, I got you.
It's it makes it stinky, they're not as cute as they.
Let me show you a picture. It's so cute. It's like,
His name's the cats are assholes.
In the first week, we're really not gonna be teaching.
Black pig or what?
No.
Well, I'm saying like the first few days, she's not gonna.
And he
Also
also
consider the fact that you waited off for
she has like this love spoon for him, and she puts Cheerios in it. Yeah, let me see if I can find a picture of
I
that.
feel like I'll skip spring break for some reason.
Really, I mean, they have a decent backyard, like you play.
I don't think she heard that whole story. She's sorry.
No, sorry, guys.
No, it's like 4
If we
backyards
move this
all
week
in
though,
one
I don't know if
share.
I'd want to.
okay.
We play like.
Or just any week, because then that
It's
makes
really
it way
the
less.
last, but it's not like a.
No, Easter's the last week.
For Napoli.
That's the biggest complaint
Let me see if I can
about
find-
the spring semester is because like ours is so, we end so early.
Because they always say like it will be as
There's no
big
time.
as.
There's no time because you almost always need to save week before.
Okay, so then let's say
But
you
luckily
miss
our
this
classes
first
aren't
week
that.
though.
You know my son.
So you'll miss this, and then I guarantee you'll have that
He was so
Friday.
excited about it. I'm like,
So
my mom
you're
always
missing
has like
7 days.
frostings and
Of
cakes,
hours.
even when I'm out, I'm like,
Like
what's wrong?
people,
She's got it. So they
people
love
do
Russian
have like this
food.
first week off.
So like long story
Then they
short,
have
Friday
that
is
Good
cake
Friday
home,
and
and it's
Monday.
literally
Well,
a
that's a
sugar,
lot.
and I'm like, what the hell happened to your cake? And he says, oh, grandma put it in a big pan. And I never cook cakes in a rectangle pan, I was doing it in a square pan. And I always like do 2 layers just cause I'm extra. So anyways, I'm like, alright, well, we'll frost it in the morning. They're like, okay, so he wakes up in the morning
So
before I
have
work.
not.
I was like, come on, let's frost the cake. And he has blue frosting, I hate blue frosting. I just don't like it because it just stinks, you know?
This is the mom. This is the mom. Love it. But she's pregnant with Victor, so just a Virgo belly.
That's crazy.
But yeah, she's big, and he's a boy, so males tend to get bigger too.
I can't wait to hear
That's
the rest.
I'm not gonna
Really keep us posted now.
Well, it depends on their training too, because someone else that went to high school, went to some high school.
Are we getting our
she
questions
has
today?
a tested, and then, they had a baby and also the package got like really aggressive, so
Tomorrow?
they had to get rid of it. So it depends on the training too, like, hopefully, Bo had good training. Yeah.
So I told my son, you can frost cake. He's frosting cake. And he's like, I just smell this. The frosting. I don't like blue frosting. I just don't know what type of taste. I don't smell nothing. He's like, does it smell like Play-Doh?
Someone had bad memory.
No, I just blue frosting stains. You get it on your lips, it just stains. You know what I mean? And it was funny because I was at my mom's house and I was like,
It's not that worth that much money, but it's.
Great. And, my sister's like, Jasmine looked at me, and I was like, do you get it? And she felt arthritis, you know? And she's like, I get it. And I was like, I don't like blue frosting. So, I don't like blue anything. So anyways, so I smell it, I'm like, it does smell like a Play-Doh. That's why I don't like this blue frosting, it's gross. Here, he finishes or whatever. He's put sprinkles on top.
Well, you will be
Sprinkles have to be like blue thing. And he was like,
Yeah.
Mommy, I'm wondering, you know, Papa loves to go fishing. I was like, yeah, he does love to go fishing. He goes, look, there's little fish in the
They're
lake.
not in this class.
And I started laughing, that's all, that's what makes sense, it was.
What other classes do you have that have?
So later that
Like, what
day,
else
like,
were you
8:30, we
teaching?
go over to my mom's house, like, we're gonna have cake and ice cream and stuff. So we go
Whatever,
over,
like,
have the cake.
Liz,
So my brother's there,
In
my
the
sister
convent?
went to see her. No, my sister's
No,
there.
just like the,
And
yeah.
so we're all like, cutting
No,
the
I'm
cake or
sorry.
whatever.
Oh, the diagnostic.
Diagnostic,
Okay,
so
so
it's
that's
like-
not even, that's not even.
And I was like, I have no idea.
So we do
You
2
don't
lessons.
know, you know?
But it's individual lessons with the
My mom's
student.
like, I don't know, like, it just, that's how it came out. or
Because
whatever.
you develop,
So we're
you
just
do the
kinda
QRI,
like
administer
joking about
it,
it.
identify the areas of weakness, and then it teach two lessons, but they're only like 15-minute lessons. Training that student that you pick,
I was like, I'm not
and then
tasting it.
you describe the results.
I was like, TJ said that the frosting smelled like Play-Doh. And so everyone was like, smell this, smell it. Everyone's like, getting everyone to smell it. So then my little brother was like, how fucking old is the frosting? You're serious. And I was like, I don't know.
Well, my only
Mommy.
concern is
So
because
he
of
opens up
working.
my mom's cupboards and she
Like,
has
I need to be out.
boxes galore. With
Filing.
There's a red frosting.
That's why the
and
cake
there's
was so flat.
Cause it was
So old,
expired.
yeah.
I was like, I cannot.
No, it's
fantastic.
fantastic. I was laughing about it. My brother's
Yeah.
and he's
Are you gonna
normally,
close?
I think all the time.
Yeah, 12:30 to 6:30, not Tuesday to Thursday.
And I'm doing 12:30 to
So I
6:30.
go borrow cake mix from my mom. So the poor lady's probably been stocking up on cake mix for me, and I just haven't went over there. And she was like, "No, I just got that one from."
Because I just did it out, so like,
And we're like,
What's not
if
so
I
long
did
ago?
6 hours,
And I was
3
like, wait,
days, in the
how
middle,
many
like
hours?
Tuesday, Wednesday,
So
Thursdays.
like,
So
that
then
shit
times
was
that by
like
3,
frosting
so
out
that's
of
18.
And so we're like,
I would do 3 hours on Monday
pulling
and
things
3
out of the
hours
cupboard.
on Friday. That's 6 hours.
2016. It
So-
expired in 2016, and we're laughing. It was just so funny. And we were like, "Don't worry, Mom, our love will never expire."
24. You know, I multiply that, yeah, by what we signed.
And so then I guess she didn't used to be
5 weeks, that's 120 hours.
She said to my
Oh, no,
dad,
this
"I
isn't my,
appreciate
this is
that
like how many
for my
hours I'll be in the
cupboards
field.
and
Oh,
whatever."
these have to be
Are you
for,
kidding me?
like,
She
2
has
hours a
one
day.
upside down pineapple cake or something like that mix for
Yeah.
7,000 and
You have to
Oh.
go work like 2 hours a day.
That's cool, so I'm okay.
Stop buying cake mix, man.
Right, and so we're just joking, we're like, "Mom, you know, it's my fault, cause I don't come over here and borrow cake, like," she's like, "None of you guys are fucking come over and ask me for a motherfucking thing," and I was like, "Calm down, Mom, we're just kidding." I was like, "Wow, you know where Tim gets it from?" Yeah, like my other brother, like, you know, we understand where Tim gets it from now, like, calm down, we're just joking, we don't. So, but yeah, Kara, why did he put the cakes back in the cupboard though? He didn't throw them away. He's like,
Yeah.
you can use them for experiments.
Because he told us, like,
And then the
do
neighbor.
you remember him
called
saying,
me
like, those
crazy
hours should
murder.
count for, your hours should count for your replacement, like.
He's a little bit.
Remember he said that?
They were like, "Hey Tom, did you
But
get a birthday cake here?"
our
"Yes,
observation
sir."
hours for this
And I'm
class,
like, if
we asked, like, will they count?
Everyone else ate it, so.
I was like, so we have 75 hours in
Tom
the
is
field, so
going
we need to last.
hard on this cake. He didn't
Like,
carry
with those hours in the shit out, like, they should, but I don't know why not. They don't count. And considering the fact that we may have,
Oh, hi,
like, one,
yeah, I'm Cece's brother. She's like, first
Like,
off, do the creepy
one of our
neighbor down the
schools,
street.
one of our
Now
schools
I'm
is
wrong.
this,
Okay.
but I
So
don't
she
know
was
what
like,
replacement
"Hey,
is, and
right,
maybe
Tom,
on
do
spring
you want
break
some
I'll
cake?"
just So that's, I have to go 4 hours a day every single day. There's not
Another
like
thing
a way
that
I
I'm
can do it.
wondering is, do you think that it would be easier if I did like Mondays and Fridays when I was just in middle?
I just want to show off my sister-in-law's baby pig because he's so cute. Can you guys see it? He's so cute. Look at him. I just want him. He's going to get so big.
I named him Bacon.
His name. She's a vegetarian. She's a vegetarian.
I named turkey then.
I almost called him ham today, and I think she would have been highly offended, but it's okay.
Well, like, he's a ham.
He's so cute.
Do you think that it would be easier? Because, okay, so Natalie, last semester,
Really fun.
she was in the same school.
Gym.
She was in the same school, and she would
You
like
guys ready for
jump
this? This shit's going down next week, you
from
guys.
like,
Yep, about to get real.
listen, I'm listening. She would go from second grade to 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 second grade, and he's like, how do you know what you're doing? I feel like it would be easier to do like 2 days in middle and then 3 days in early. Instead of
This is, you're welcome, you can take a look at it when, if you have any questions, let me know. All right, I hear this yawning. All right, now, long division. Now, you guys had that in the middle class. Can you explain it to the ones that didn't have it?
I can read off of.
Yeah, can you just piece the thing together?
Gosh, that was so long ago.
Yeah, it was the beginning of the semester.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why I can't explain it right now, because I'm really tired, my brain's full right now.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
long division. How do we teach? And if you look, let me just show you the problem with long division. Teaching it, now really this is going to be a 4th grade level. So you might be introducing it. Okay, so when we do 325 divided by 2, the first thing that the students see is that this is backwards. Everything was always left to right before, now it's right to left. So, and a lot of times I'll put 325 here and put the 2 there. Okay? The first thing we do is say, how many 2s are in 3? Now we're confusing the students. Because again, what do you mean 3? That's 325. How many 2s are in 3? That's not even 3, that's a 300. And what do we say as teachers in the traditional class? We say, just follow along. Don't think about it, just follow. And just think about it. We're saying, don't think about it. Now this is a school. Don't think, don't reason, just follow along with what I do. So we say, how many 2s are in 3? And they say, well, okay, you can get 1. So I say, okay, I put 1 up here. Now I go 1 times 2. And if the students are watching, they're saying, 1 time, I thought we were doing division. Okay, no, just follow along. 1 times 2 is 2, and I'm going to put that here. Okay, and now I'm going to subtract. 3 minus 2 is 1. And the other saying, where's the division coming into play? All right? Okay? And now that's if they're thinking. Okay? If they've been trained not to think, they're saying, okay, just show me. But you're hopefully going to get your students to think. And then we bring down the 2. What about the 5? No, we don't bring that down, just the 2. You see how this is all just very confusing? And now how many 2s are in 12? 6, okay. And then 6 times 2 is 12, we subtract, okay. So, to get them to be able to do this, we talked about this in the middle school class, because this really does belong in the middle school class, but you may have some students that will want to do it, be able to do it in 3rd grade. All right? So, anyone want to at least, I mean, you just put the pieces together. Yeah, Tony, do you want to, Archer? Yeah, Tony, do you
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm
want
gonna tell you exactly what you told us.
to? Okay,
It says that, you want us to hand out base 10 blocks,
okay.
and then ensure that they all know which one is the 10s and the 100s and 1s if it's necessary. And then give them a certain number, like 412, and ask them to split it into 3 groups. And then once they do that, ask them how they did it.
Okay, so what Tony's saying is that they're going to represent 412. They've used the blocks before, so there's their 412.
Isn't this like the video that I posted with my son?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it's very similar, because you did it with him.
yeah.
All right, so there's 412. They break it three ways, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's a 1 for you, 1 for you, and 1 for me. And now I've got this one here, and I've got to break this into 10 of them, because I can't break this 3 ways. I've got to break this into 10 sticks. So now I have 10 sticks, and 1 stick will be 11 sticks. Okay, so now that I broke it, I traded it, now I can continue to divide these out, 3 for you, 3 for you.
This is partitioning, right?
This is partitioning, yeah. Okay, so there, 3, and now I've got this left over, 22 left, so what am I gonna do? I'm gonna break these into 10 and 10 little ones. So I'm gonna have 22 little ones, I'm gonna break those up into 3, and then there's 1 left over. Okay? All right, so Tony, they're doing it however they wanna do it, right?
Yeah.
Because the way I did it is gonna be our goal. But they're gonna do it, because they might begin, I'm not sure if they could or not with this problem. I guess with this problem, they'd almost have to do it that way. But if I had a problem like, let's just make it 442, they could say, I can break it 3 ways, so here, let me put 1, 1, and 1, and I'll come back for that one later, then do 1, 1, and 1. Okay, and then I'll come back and do, in other words, they can do it a lot of different ways. All right, now the way I did it is the way, that should be the next step, right, Tony?
It says, for you to ask them how they did it, and then do two more problems like that one, sharing your methods and your solutions on how they did it.
Okay.
And so I'm sure if you do it one way and I do it one way, Shannon does it one way, it's probably not gonna be all the same way, and then the next time, the student will probably try it the way that someone else did it, maybe.
Yeah.
If it, and then hopefully get to the way that we want them to do it. It says, if someone happens to remove all the hundreds, first tens, then ones, have them share their solution. So it's basically what I just said, try different methods. Ask students to try solutions for 2 or 3 problems. When it seems they understand this method, then you can show them the algorithm.
Okay, so what Tony is basically saying is that you let them do it however they want the first 2 or 3 times. They share their methods of solutions, a lot of different ways they're gonna do it. And then if somebody happens to do it exactly the way I did it up here, where they got rid of all the hundreds first before they worked on the tens, and got rid of all the tens before they worked on the ones, that's the one you're gonna want the whole class to do. Okay? Now, if nobody did it, then I'm gonna show them this way. You have to get rid of all the hundreds first before they go on to the tens. They can't break up the hundreds and the tens at the same time and go back to the hundreds and continue to break them up. Does that make sense? Or not? Okay? All right, so once they do that, have them practice it, so they're going to do the hundreds first, then the tens and the ones. They do like 3, 4 problems like that, and I see if they're doing it the correct way. Okay, then what's the next step, Tony?
Write the problem on the board.
Okay.
And then do it step by step with the base 10 blocks, and as you get your answer, you start putting it up one by one and you correspond them back and forth.
Okay, so we're gonna go step by step. So I'm gonna say, okay, you just did this problem, 412 divided by 3. Put it back to the beginning, so they put it back to the beginning, there's 412. And I'm gonna say, okay, what's the first thing that you did? So you're gonna say, we broke up the hundreds. Okay, I'm gonna say, just break up the hundreds and then stop. And I might even model it up here where I want them to stop. So they do this, they do this, and they do this. Okay, and stop before you break that apart. Right now, that's what you have, right? And now I'm trying to connect that to this. So I'm gonna say, okay, where are the 400s in here, in this number here, it's right there. Okay, that's the 400s, and you broke them 3 ways, right? And so everybody got how many hundreds? 1, and you were left with 1. Now they might just write 1 down here, now that'd be okay. Another instead of going 1 times 3 is 3, 4 minus 3 is 1. It's obvious right now it's 1. So how many were left? You had 1 left. Okay, now what are you gonna do? They say we're gonna take this 1, make it into 10 tens. All right? Go ahead and do that and then stop. So make it into 10 tens. Okay? I'm gonna say, so this 100, what did you make it into? 10 tens. Okay, so that became that, right? The 1 became 10. Okay? Now how many total tens do you have? They say we have this 10 and this one right here. We have 11. Where's that one up here? That's this one. Okay, so if I add those together, I have a total of 11 tens. See now, that's the idea of bringing this one down, ignoring the 2. So with the base 10 blocks, that's why I can just look at the 4, look at the 1, and look at the 2. All right? But they're understanding it, we're building it. I'm just following what they've been doing physically. Okay? I say, okay, so now that you have the 11 tens, what do? I divide those 3 ways, and they show me, and there's 1 left over. I say, okay, or there's 2 left over, I think. I say, okay, so you took the 11, you divided them 3 ways, and everybody got, or each group got 3. So from the 11, you took away 3 groups of 3. Right, you had 11, and 3 here, 3 here, 3 here. What's groups? What does that mean? Groups, multiplication. So 3 groups of 3, you took away 3 times 3, or you took away 9. Okay, and how many were left? 2. Okay, so 11 take away 9 is 2. Okay, so now I have the 2 sticks there. Say, now what are you going to do? I'm going to make that into 20 little ones. I say, go ahead and do that and then stop. And they go ahead and they do it. So this 2 tens became 20 ones. And then how many total ones do you have?
22.
Got 22. And where did you get those 2 from? Where's that up here? It's right here. Okay. And now go ahead and break those apart. They break them into, everybody gets 7, or every group gets 7. So, and then they can see right there, that's 3 groups of 7. So from the 22, I took away 3 groups of 7, or I took away, bless you, 3 groups of 7, 3 times 7 is 21, and I was left with 1. We have a remainder of 1. Okay? Does that make sense? All right, and then I would do that. You can see I'd want to do that several times. So I give them another problem, we go through the same thing, connect it, and then at some point I'm going to say, try it in writing without using the blocks. So maybe the 4th or 5th problem, I say, try it in writing. See how far you can get. Okay? And that's where you're going to start hearing them talk about they're going to say, okay, that would be like if you had 3 of those big hundreds, and if we're dividing it between 2 people, everybody gets 1. And so, and they're going to skip steps, which is okay. I mean, I'm talking about formal steps, not, they're doing the math right, but they might say, okay, that means 1's left, so I make it to 10 ones, or 10 tens, and I have 7 W's 10, so I have 17 tens. So they could actually just write that. But what that's telling you is that, boy, they really understand this. See, I wouldn't be upset that they didn't write 2 times 1 and subtract 1 and bring down the 7. You know, if they could do that, and they really got it. Okay? But that's what you should hear. As they're doing the written part, they're going to be referring to their experience, and their experience is right over here. So they're going to be talking about base 10 blocks, okay? And that's what's going to help you. So it's going to be the concept, the concrete, that's going to help them with the abstract. And then if they make a mistake, like for example, let's say I come over here and I said, okay, 1's left, so I have 10. So I made 10 sticks, so 10 to 5, everybody gets 5 sticks, and now there's 4 ones, so everybody gets 2. Okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, okay, could you go ahead and show me with the blocks? I'm not going to say, no, you missed something. I'll say, show me with the blocks, and as they do it, they're going to get a different answer. It's like, well, can you figure out, where did you go wrong? Okay, what did you do? You know, and you could even point out, you know, if you can see it, you say, something here, because 10 divided, everybody had more than 5 tens. They had whatever would be here. Oh, okay, I forgot to, they have a better chance of finding their own mistake. Whereas in the traditional way, when we tell them, when they say, I missed something, I forget, and it's like, there's nothing they can do about it. You know, they can't figure it out on their own. Are we okay with that? Okay, now, if you want to talk about remainders, I do have a book. And the students could have, and in the boxes, you don't have to get these out, but in the boxes there are 24 Unifix cubes that fit together, 24 of one color and then 1 of another color. And you'll see why there's 1 of another color. Okay, so remainder of 1 story of Joe might just well explain what happens to numbers when they must remain. After division and they're left behind as lonesome remainders, it seems so unkind. Down by an orchard of young apple trees, the sunshine fell hot, about 90 degrees, so insects all scurry for any cool shade. From mushroom or leaf, they watched a parade. The 25th Squadron marched past the bug crowd, bound and determined to make their queen proud. The troop had divided by 2 for the show. Each bug had a partner, except Soldier Joe. So now they have the 25 there, and the one that's a different color, that's going to be Joe. Okay? So they break them into 2 groups, and they say, okay, they have the one there, you say, okay, so what would that be with division? 25 divided by 2, remainder of 1. Joe's left over. And so you can show them how to write that. Okay? Up 2, 3, 4, we're in the 25th Army Corps. Queens count 2, 3, we're the marching infantry. The Queen wasn't pleased. We're unhappy to find that one soldier's left at the end of a line. A honeybee hovered above Lone Joe's head. The Queen likes things tidy, the bee sternly said. I'm sorry, Private, said Joe's Sergeant Stephen. You must stand aside so the troop will be even. The 2 lines of 12 then marched neatly away, while Bug Soldier Joe had no choice but to stay. Lone Soldier Joe learned it wasn't much fun to find himself labeled remainder of 1. The brainy Bug Soldier stayed up the whole night. Perhaps 1 more line would make everything right. Okay, so I'd ask the students, can you break into 3 lines and see if they come out even? And of course they don't. And so when they don't, they put Joe's at the end. All 25 soldiers marched past the bug crowd, nervously hoping they'd make their queen proud. The troop had divided by 3 for the show. Each line seemed perfect, and someone spied Joe. Up 2, 3, 4, we're in the 25th Army Corps. Queens count 2, 3, we're the marching infantry. You can see Joe's, kind of looking. Well, at least I think it's amusing. The regal head shook. It's disturbing to find one oddball bug at the end of a line. A slender mosquito loomed over Joe's head. Too bad you're a misfit, the test sharply said. I'm sorry, Private, says Joe's Sergeant Stephen. If you stand aside, then the troop will look even. The 3 lines of 8 all marched neatly away. While sad and disheartened, poor Joe had to stay. The oddball bug Joe knew it wasn't much fun to feel so left out, a remainder of 1. Again, the lone soldier thought all through the night, with 1 more bug line, it might prove out all right. Okay, so now the students break them apart again. The 25th Squadron marched past the bug crowd, anxiously longing to make their queen proud. The troop had divided by 4 for the show. The lines all looked even till they spotted Joe. Her Highness pointed, we're angry to find a tag-along bug at the end of 1 line. A shy dragonfly fluttered over Joe's head. Now don't get discouraged, the fly softly said. And again, I could be writing the problems on the board with the remainder. Operator remainder. I'm sorry, Private, says Joe Sergeant Stephen. You must stand aside, then the troop will be even. 4 lines of 6 marched so neatly away. Sad Joe couldn't watch, for he had to stay. Poor tag-along Joe didn't have any fun, always left out a remainder of 1. But hard-thinking Joe had the answer that night. Another bug line must make it right, work right. And so on. And lo and behold, the thing works, okay?
What's this book called?
This is called a remainder of 1. Okay. Now, I'm not going to my index cards. And then, Tony, if you want to get out that one that you did with division multiplication, I don't know if you have it with you. Okay.
those are all at home.
Those are all, well, you can describe, maybe next time on Wednesday. if you
I
want.
think a couple of them seen it, but yeah, I can describe what it was.
Okay.
Right now?
I'm just gonna show them the basic one, and then you can say how you modify it. Okay, so here we've got something that you could make for your students, instead of making a lot of flashcards. Here I've got all of them for divided by 7. So I'll show you how it's done. Okay, so if I'm holding this and pointing this at the class, or if someone's sitting next to each other, and they're holding this and they're pointing it towards their partner who they're testing, they can put a pencil in one of these little tick marks. So for example, if I put the pencil right here, the problem is now, if I put it right here, the problem I want my friend to answer is 42 divided by 7. Okay? Now, with my pencil here, since I'm showing this to the other person, on the other side is the answer. Okay? And I can even do this with multiplication.
So funny at the same time.
Very cool.
All right? So I put all of them, I just have them randomly. But if you'd like to make one, now the blue boxes, there are some protractors that'll make a nice curve if you want to use that. You don't have to use that. You just make the curve yourself. And the scissors are in there too. Did you want to make one of these?
Yeah.
Okay. And then Tony, you can show, or tell us what you do, or you can show us on Wednesday.
Well, I did the same thing. I looked at what Dr. Christie wrote on the card, and like, if you, can you flip that one over?
Yeah.
And I feel like you guys, when you make these, this is probably, it might be important to you, it might not be. But if you see the numbers that he wrote on the back side of it, no one's looking, but okay. You see the 8 is in the middle? My kids, instead of like trying to put a 4 on one, I just followed this pattern the whole time. My kids ended up figuring out that the 8 was in the middle. So if I was using the other side, they would just be like 8, 10.
Oh.
So they started to figure out where I put the numbers at, which I guess in reality, kids are gonna figure stuff like that out eventually anyway.
Yeah.
But I think that if I were to make more and I had time, then I would kind of mix the numbers up on each of them and not always have 8 in the middle.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And I also used a hole puncher. I was gonna use a string and like have them do it themselves and use a string to go up and down, but I ended up using a hole puncher in the middle, and I hole punched the notches instead. And you could take like a straw, or like they have those not popsicles, those sucker sticks that you can buy. And I just had them have a sucker stick in their hand, and they would put it right on the notch. And it kind of fit in good because it was like the hole puncher, so I only kind of hole punched half of it. But I did make them laminate them and then hole punch them.
Okay.
So, but they seem to like them, so I thought, I made a whole bunch of them, I just haven't written them out yet, but I've cut all the different pieces to them and stuff. Just so
Okay.
you could have like extra, and I don't know how hard this would be to have your kids do this in class. I know that my kids come home with like paper, tiny cards or whatever, and they're in like a baggie, and then he never uses them after that. So sometimes I think the things that we make or have the kids do, is it gonna last?
Yeah, yeah.
Couldn't another way for both students to be able to, I guess, be active during this process is like, while one student is holding, I guess if they're practicing the division, and so that student's looking at the division, and I'm looking at the multiplication, couldn't we have like 2 pieces of scrap paper for both students, write down their answers, and then the division student can say what their answer is, because whatever that answer is the same for the or you know what I'm
Yeah, I
saying?
know what you're
Like-
saying, yeah, because you, when you turn it over, they'll get their answer, they'll
Right.
get your answer.
So then they can like write down what they think it is,
Yeah.
or it could be like on a dry erase board or something, and then they could, like, I could hold it up to the division side, and they could see what my answer is and tell me if
Yeah.
I'm right or wrong, and then they could do the same with me.
So they could both do it.
Yeah.
So if they're gonna do that, then Tony, your idea of, because Tony said you could just put a punch here, a little hole, and then have a piece of yarn. Like
Okay,
hang
yeah.
that. And then that way you could just put the yarn up over, and that way they could both then write, rather than one holding, if one's holding a pencil or something,
Mhm.
they can't write, so then they could just write off to the side. Yeah, that's a good idea.
But there's actually, what, was there 10 or 12? Did you do up to 12, or did you do to 10? I can't remember.
I think there's either, I think it's 11. If you wanna know where those notches go, the way I did it was, I would just put one in the middle, and then I just kept splitting it. I would split this side and put a notch there, split this side and put a notch there. And then split this and put a notch in here, split this and put a notch here, put a notch here and put a notch here. I think that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, I have to keep doing it. So I put a notch, 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 notch. And then what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not sure how I did it. I swore that was the way I did it.
When my kids were playing this too, like Kayla was saying, so they could both play, one of them had like the 7s and one of them had the 3s or something. And so they would kind of go about it that way, and then they'd swap cards or do a different one so that they could both play at the same time too.
And they like doing it?
Yeah,
Well, I know what I did wrong. When you do this, then you split this and you split this, then you put 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, 2 here. Is that okay? Yeah, I like that. You know, you put the yarn in there and then both can do it at the same time. Yeah, it's interesting, Tony, you said that they memorized, you know, the 8s in the middle. That's kind of, if they could relate that in other times, you know, when they're like doing a math test or something, that'd be great, you know what I mean? But I don't know if they'd be reminded about that. Okay, Kayla. I'm sorry, Kara?
Yeah, I responded.
You don't have your partner here today. You don't want to put the notches in?
I just like that stuff, so I'm just gonna do it.
Oh, well, here, you want another card?
I didn't make anything even.
so when we teach lessons, can the, like the games that we made, those could be part of our lesson, that could be the lesson, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to necessarily be like standing up, it could be small. Is that gonna be a requirement, like one of them has to be small group, or, cause I remember something we had to do, was like one was small group, one was large group, or whatever.
It's just 5 lessons.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I probably won't get to have these games done by the end of this week, so if you need them for something you're gonna teach, just let me know and you can just come and get them. Okay? I wanna look at them really well, and I'm not gonna have time this week. You don't have to worry about the grade on them, everyone's doing. The only thing that can hurt you is if you go in the field and you really have a lot of problems, you know, you get a lot of 1s. That's the only thing that could threaten an A, your grade in here.
One's being non-lessons or one?
Ones, you know, when they start marking and saying, well, she's always late and he's always, he's never prepared and.
Because I think that's like my biggest concern is I'm not very confident in my own math ability, so then I'm not gonna be confident in my teaching. So when my supervisor comes in, or even just my cooperating teacher, when they assess how I do it, I mean, I'm still gonna try my hardest, obviously, but
Yeah.
I'm just afraid they're gonna see that as me not being a strong teacher, whereas I'm just not strong in that specific content area.
Yeah, here, the thing you really have to think about and be concerned with is, like if they say, if they make a recommendation, and you can't get overwhelmed with how many they can't give you like 12 recommendations for the next lesson. If they give you 12, you say, okay, pick 2 or 3, and that's what I'm gonna work on next time. And if you work on those and you show improvement, there's no problem. Because, I mean, you should have, I mean, you know, this is first time teaching math, and there should be a lot of areas to improve.
Yeah.
But it would be something like, if they said, okay, you aren't prepared, and then again, the next time you aren't prepared, That's the only thing they could threaten, because I could even threaten you from going on to student teaching.
It's more of like your actual teaching abilities and like your
Professionalism and everything, yeah. Because I'm not looking at those, because here, for the last 10 weeks, we've done paper, pencil, all that stuff. We've done that. Now you're out there. I'm gonna look at your portfolios, but if they're happy with what you're doing, then that's fine with me, because that's all field now. Okay? Are we okay with this?
Can you flip that over?
Yeah.
And this is the exact reason why I copied every single number instead of making my own up, because it was easier to just know what to write it in, or.
All right, well, I think the last thing I wanted to do, we aren't gonna have time for, so we'll do it maybe next time when I go over the field requirements. I already told you that most of the field requirements as it is. I guess I'll just, if you can hold on to the yellow squares and keep them for next time, that would be good. If you think you aren't gonna be able to keep them, then I'll just take them. Everybody see the books? Okay.
Okay, so it's like you verbs and then you like have them at the reference. And this is why. Alright, I'll just write it down.
That's a good point too, actually.
He hasn't graded anything.
Yes. Labor free.
Maybe two.
Money free. Whatever they get. Yeah. And as for time,
So I can look up.
it might take a while, but it's like, it's a great job.
Yeah, I brought my book. Can you spell it?
Yeesh, but I got some yeesh.
I think we're done. Let me show something. Are you going to the second floor or the basement? Okay.
Wait, what was that second floor?
I do know that Zach's going grocery shopping tomorrow.
We don't have any food at home.
Well, I was gonna suggest let's.
We'll check out.
Oh,
I have to just make sure.
It is, of course.
I'm not paying 14 cents to use it, no way.
We
or I mean, before our.
Could you imagine? How funny that would be. Goal is to show